We have a new gas tax, and Tim Ryan takes the plunge. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Laura Bischoff, State House reporter for the Dayton Daily News. Ann Fisher, host of All Sides with Ann Fisher on 89.7 NPR News. Dale Butlin, Democratic strategist, and Mike Gonidakis, Republican strategist. Ohio drivers will pay higher gasoline and diesel fuel taxes starting in July. The 3-month process of settling on a way to pay for Ohio's highways and roadways ended this week when Governor DeWine signed the transportation bill. The key component, a 10.5 cents per gallon increase in the gasoline tax and a 19 cents a gallon hike on diesel fuel. For Mike DeWine, who wanted an 18 cents a gallon increase, a half a tank is better than an empty tank.
The real disagreement that you saw was over how long a time we were going to focus on fixing this problem. And it became clear to me that the legislature looked at this a little differently than I did. Their point, I think, was very well taken. We disagreed about it, but it was certainly a legitimate point.
Well, Bischoff, was this what this was all about from the beginning? Was a simple negotiation? DeWine started high, they came in low, they met in the middle.
Well, I think that a lot of the lawmakers wanted to be convinced that the amount that they were going to be able to raise from whatever increase they did was what ODOT needed to, address the problem. I think that Governor DeWine was really kind of swinging for the fences with this 18-cent proposal. Particularly, he wanted it indexed to inflation, so it would just rise automatically without further approval by lawmakers. And I think that he had a big battle in the legislature just right out of the gate because the lawmakers are very anti-tax increases. They are much more in love with tax cuts than tax increases.
I think about it this way as far as what ODOT needs. There's a couple different ways to look at it. What ODOT needs to get the roads built for the next 6 months to 2 years, or doesn't ODOT also need the ability to plan long-term on these very, very expensive and complex projects? And that's what they're not getting now. The governor wanted to get a 10-year frame of reference for planning. They've given him a 2 to 4 year frame of reference. Mike
Gonidakis, the major achievement, legislative achievement for the Republican-led legislature and the governor, also a Republican so far, is a tax increase. How does that sit?
I think with the average voter, probably not too well, but it was a bipartisan vote, of course. Almost every single Democrat voted for it as well. At the end of the day, Mike showed amazing leadership because he, past 3 governors kicked the can down the road, leveraged our credit card to pay for it so they could stand up and say, we don't raise taxes. Well, the bill came due on Mike DeWine's watch first thing, so he stood up and did the right thing. He won on that aspect, but the legislature won too because what they did is they gave what ODOT needed. Not what ODOT wanted, but what ODOT needed today. And it's about $1 billion increase. So, I think that's a lot of money that they're getting, but it was leadership all around by the Democrats, the Republicans, and our terrific governor.
Dale, some Democrats faulted this as a tax on working people. I mean, it's going to amount to, on average, about $20, $25 a year tops, depending on what kind of car you drive or how much you drive, that kind of thing. Is it an unfair tax, or is this a proper way to fund transportation for folks who drive every day?
Well, I personally, and I've been saying this for a long time, for a legislature that never hesitates, when I say legislature, I'm talking about Republicans who run the legislature now, never hesitate to lard up our tax code with tax loopholes that benefit the wealthy to the tune of $9 billion a year. $9 billion a year in lost revenue. But when it comes to a gas tax to fix our roads and bridges, the best they can do is something that the governor says is going to be $500 million less than we need to protect public safety. So frankly, I would like to see closing down some of these loopholes. Surely people wealthy enough to buy private airplanes don't need a tax break. Beer manufacturers who pay their taxes on time don't deserve a tax break. Those are the kinds of things that are in there that you can close and get some money that we need for things like fixing our roads and bridges.
Laura, The license plates. That's the other big item.
Right.
Front
so,
license plate. That's the big deal.
people are
They're going away.
They're very into this issue. Ohio's had a mandate to display a front plate since I think 1908 or so. They're very unpopular with cars, owners of sports cars or fancy cars, or anybody who really cares about the aesthetics of their front bumper, which apparently there's a lot of them.
I care very much.
And
I've seen your bumper. You shouldn't.
yeah, and there's an argument that it devalues the car, and that there's a lot of technology in the front bumper, blah blah blah. But I think also people are they don't like the license plate reading technology that has been employed for the last 10 years or so by police agencies and also by the Turnpike. You know, they can capture your front plate or your back plate, and they store a photo of your car, where it was, time, date. GPS coordinates for a year or so. Police see this as an incredibly valuable tool, and getting rid of the front plate eliminates half the data points.
Incredibly valuable tool, but it's not clear in other states that it's made that much of a difference that they don't have the front license plate. So it's just it's kind of hard to justify, and it costs money.
Yeah, they say, well, basically you save, what is it, about, I don't know how much,
$1
$1 million to 2
million,
million.
close to $2 million.
You cut the cost in half eventually.
Yeah, look, that's one thing we can all, Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, come together where it's not needed. Look, soccer moms who drive Honda Odysseys, these minivans, they have technology in the front that help with lane shifting and if you're going to approach something. So it's not just sports cars, Mercedes and that. It's the technology that are in bumpers and just everyday vehicles today. So it's the right thing to do. The legislature got that one right.
Fun fact, the plates are made by prisoners at Lebanon Correctional.
But who supplies them with the steel? That's always my question.
I don't know.
I wonder if there's a
Someone
secret,
Google it.
secret license plate lobbying, steel lobbying out there. Anyway, you know who's going to be disappointed is Campus Park, the friendly monitors of the OSU parking lots. They have long wanted license plates in the front so they can just drive by and give you a ticket. That's going to be much tougher in a couple years, much to the chagrin of students and faculty. All right, you know what? Congressman Tim Ryan will run for a higher office. The congressman who repeatedly toys with running for U.S. Senate or for governor says he wants to be president of the United States. In his daytime TV announcement, the Youngstown area Democrat said he can win back rural America and unseat Donald Trump.
I'm just going to be myself. I'm going to be for the things I've always been for. And I think that most progressives are going to see that as a candidate that can not only advance a progressive agenda, but also win. I can win Western PA, I can win Ohio, I can win Michigan, I can win Wisconsin, and that means Donald Trump is going back to Mar-a-Lago full time.
Dale Butlin, is he a serious candidate? Does he have a chance to get the nomination?
Tim Ryan is a good man, and he's a good congressman who has only a slightly better chance of being elected president than I do. Tim, obviously, with Sherrod Brown out of the race, Tim thought maybe he could be the voice of the working person. Yep. But he's got little national name ID, he's got no money, and he's got no realistic prospect for raising the $100 million or so that you need to be a viable candidate these days.
Why is he doing it? What's your guess?
I'm not sure. Everybody thinks they can be president. If you get to be in Congress or you get to be in the Senate, or even sometimes you don't even have to go that high because we have some mayors running and so forth. Everybody thinks they can do it. It's a crowded field, and people think, who knows, maybe I'll catch lightning in a bottle.
I applaud anyone who wants to run for president, but I've never met a politician who hates their job as much as Tim Ryan. Every year, it's I might run for this, I might run for that, I might run for governor.
He loves it because he stays.
But then he pulls back. But he's always looking for that next job. At the end of the day, he's doing this because he knows when redistricting comes around, his district's gone. Look, I believe that the people with the pen are going to end up putting a Cincinnati seat in for Democrats like they did in Franklin County for Joyce Beatty, and then they're going to dissolve his seat. So I think he's trying to raise his profile now, latch on to the future nominee somewhere, some way to find a future job on state government payroll or federal government.
He does say he's the Youngstown Democrat. He can appeal to the Trump voter. He won his district hugely, even much more than Sherrod Brown did in the last election. Lori, could he possibly catch fire?
Well, he's going to need some money to catch fire, and as Dale said, it takes $100 million or so to you have to raise the money to get out there, and I think that's going to be his biggest challenge. I think the bookmakers have it at like 51 odds for Tim Ryan, and
So you're saying there's a chance?
There's a there's also there's 17, 18 people are declared. There's 7 more on the fence. You almost need baseball cards or like one of those little Brady Bunch charts to
Again.
keep track of who's running.
Running from the House is extremely difficult. There is a reason we have not elected a sitting member of the House president since James Garfield. Outside your district, nobody knows who you are. And it takes a lot of money to build the kind of name recognition that you need to.
You don't have the network that a statewide candidate
And
has.
so this is probably a building block in that process, and he's putting it out there, seeing what the numbers tell him, and moving forward.
He may
I
very
mean,
well want to run against Portman next
First
time.
U.S.
Yeah,
Senate,
but he needs to build. He needs to build more public identity with people in the larger ring.
A couple problems. He was at one point in his career anti-abortion. Also was popular with the NRA. He's changed his positions on that, and that's going to come out in a Democratic primary should he become a contender.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's already just said, yeah, I changed my mind, and he did that in 2015, I think, and he doesn't back away from that, and so I think, which is personally, I think that's the way to go. Don't run away from it. Don't try to pretend like it didn't happen, and see how he explains himself. And he's pretty good at explaining himself, all things being equal. But first, you got to be able to hear him, and I don't know if being on The View is going to launch him particularly well.
It's hard to compete with Joe Biden this week on the Democratic News Channel. What do we make about the controversy over how he is, quote, a tactile politician, likes to hug, likes to be, perhaps too comfortable with
It's nothing we didn't know. I mean, everybody knew that about Joe Biden. It's not a secret.
some of the details we didn't know. I mean, how smelling of hair and kissing the backs of women's heads and things like that.
Yes, Mike, you're absolutely right on all that, and Ann too. But keep in mind, there's 3 women now that have come out and made allegations against him. So forget just the goofy Twitter videos. Let's talk about the allegations that women are making, how they felt, because this is the era we're in now. We should have been in it a long time ago. So let's not dismiss the
2016?
allegations.
Wait.
Let's not dismiss the allegations. But you know what? As Republicans, we're going to stand back and watch the Democrats eat their own, because there's 17 other candidates, Elizabeth Warren and others, that are going to trash Joe Biden now.
But how can you criticize Joe Biden when your guy, Donald
I'm
Trump?
not. I'm stepping back. I'm going to let the Democrats do that.
Yeah, well, so let's talk about the allegations, as Mike says. This is from a guy who still supports a man who pays off porn stars, pays hush money to porn stars, and brags openly about grabbing women by their private parts. Joe Biden has never been accused by anybody of sexual misconduct. Even the women who have said that his touching of them made them feel uncomfortable, all of them have said there was nothing sexual, even remotely sexual about it. I've known Joe Biden for a very long time. I knew him when I worked in the Senate. Everybody who knows Joe Biden knows that this is who he is. And he does it with men, he does it with women, he does it with children. He touches, he oftentimes if people are in a bad way, he comforts them. The irony of this whole thing is, in 40 years of public life, there's never been a whiff of sexual misconduct around Joe Biden. This is a man who, for 36 years in the Senate, avoided the cocktail circuit in Washington, got on a train every single night to go home to his wife and children in Delaware.
But Laura, it shows how this conversation has changed and how we look at these interactions really completely differently than we did even just 2 or 3 years ago.
It still seems strange to me, though. I mean, I think there's the Me Too movement has really heightened the sensitivities that everybody has. And I think that that's why this is a news story. But at the same time, it's strange to me that, the President of the United States has faced all kinds of allegations, lawsuits. His former lawyer arranged these hush payments, and somehow there's not a direct comparison being made.
Do you think Democrats are hurting themselves by making there's been allegations this all stuff has been fueled by the Bernie Sanders campaign and the folks who are coming out. There's politics behind some of these allegations. Are they hurting themselves in the long run by damaging a leading candidate?
I think they do. Ultimately, the party hurts itself if they damage this leading candidate, because he could be good for the party writ large going forward. But I can't imagine that they haven't gone through these kinds of issues with a fine-tooth comb. Now, by the way, he still hasn't announced. And I don't know whether that has anything to do with it, whether they're just pulling back and waiting for the dust to settle or not. But I agree with what Laura said. The irony is astounding that this is what we're talking about now. But the Me Too movement has made us more sensitive to a lot of things, and people's feelings do count. And he's acknowledged that, but he has not gone back and said, "I wish I hadn't have hugged that person or, done something that came natural to them.
There's got to be a sense of proportionality.
Right.
Not every offense is worthy of the death penalty. And I recognize the times have changed, and I think Joe Biden's age is a legitimate issue, and whether the party wants to nominate someone from his generation, that is a legitimate issue. But I think it would be a mistake and a shame if people as thoroughly decent as Joe Biden were drummed out of politics over something as innocent as this has been.
All right, as you know, our method of electing a president is complicated. We vote, but our votes don't elect the president. They help decide our state's members of the Electoral College. They vote for president. And sometimes, like 2016, the candidate who gets the most votes nationally fails to win the Electoral College vote. That's how Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton, even though she had 3 million more votes than he did. Now there's an effort to change the system. Ohio voters this fall could vote on a plan to require Ohio's electoral votes go to the candidate who wins the national popular vote, even if that candidate does not win the state. About a dozen other states already have done this. More would need to join to, in effect, nullify the Electoral College. Ann Fisher, imagine if Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton by 500,000 votes in a presidential election, but all of Ohio's 18 votes had to go to Hillary Clinton.
Okay, imagine. He would say, I told you so.
But I mean,
this is wrong.
There'd be outrage.
Oh, there would be outrage. There has been outrage since 2016. I mean, there always is. It's becoming a regular thing now. It's not the first time, though. This has been going on for a long time. I think Ohio will join 17 or 18 other states if the voters were to approve this. It's a workaround, though, to the basic problem, which is the Electoral College. It wouldn't get rid of the Electoral College. It would just work around the Electoral College because getting an amendment to the Constitution is virtually impossible these days. So I don't know. I mean, it's the outrage. It's cyclical. There was a point in time when Democrats and Republicans and equally didn't like the Electoral College, but there's reasons for it, and I don't know if people are going to want that much change in Ohio.
Mike, do we need the Electoral College?
Yes, we do. It's something that we hold near and dear to our heart, whether it's in my party's favor or Dale's party favor or whoever our favorite is. But at the end of the day, this is a dark money group. Jackie Borchardt, Cincinnati Enquirer, put a story up on Twitter today saying we don't know who's backing this, who's putting this up. Don McTeague, the local attorney here, is the one that filed the paperwork, but we don't know where the money's coming from. At the end of the day, Mike, the voters of Ohio will soundly reject this. Less than desirable. Same reason why we don't appoint our judges. Look, every 2 years, Maureen O'Connor or someone bar association comes out and says we should appoint our judges in Ohio, not elect them, and that goes over like a lead balloon because people.
I don't even know that Ohio voters are going to have a chance to vote on this. I mean, it requires 443,000 valid signatures by July 3rd. That's a heavy lift.
This is just step one, is
Right.
getting the approval of the language.
As Ann said, there was a time not too long ago when huge majorities of both Republicans and Democrats wanted to get rid of the Electoral College. It really is a relic from our country's founding. There were two reasons for it that were put in there. The most important one is that it was a sop to the slave-owning states to get them to join the Union, to sign the Constitution to join the Union. But the reality is this. Here is the fundamental point. Why should some citizens' votes count more than other citizens' votes? Why should a voter in, say, Wyoming have 76 times the influence and power of a voter in California? Why should a Republican voter in the state of Ohio have less influence than a Republican voter in Idaho? In every other election that we hold in this country, whether it's for Congress or mayor or dog catcher, the person who gets the most votes wins. Why should it be any different for president?
And the argument that, well, this gets the candidates out to the other states, well, that wasn't why it was put into the Constitution, because back in those days, they never left their front porch when it came to running for president. So it wasn't about that. And now we have technology that breaches all of those limitations that we used to have.
That's
Everyone
still
has
only
access.
going to maybe a dozen states.
And even
during
if
the
they
election.
do, who shows up at those rallies? The faithful, not anyone new that's going to learn something new.
Ned Foley from OSU, election expert, he says one simple fix with this would be make states have a clear majority winner capture their electoral votes. You can't win Ohio's 18 electoral votes with 48% of the vote. you have to have a majority, 50 votes plus one, and that would help. Is that a simple solution? Just have a runoff. If no one has a 50% majority, you have a second election, a few weeks later, have a runoff.
So get rid of winner take all? Is that
No,
what you say?
it would instead of having like 3 candidates, a Green Party, Libertarian candidate siphoning off votes. And
Well,
The
how do you get
problem,
rid of
though, with
that?
what Mr. Foley says, and I know him, by the way, he's a good man. The problem is it still has states electing our presidents. And in my opinion, presidents should be chosen not by states, but by voters. And every voter should have exactly the same power and influence as every other voter, regardless of their zip code or where they happen to live.
But that's why Idaho doesn't have 18 electoral college votes like Ohio, because they're smaller in population. So this argument Dale's making doesn't really hold, because the fact that smaller states have less electoral college votes to add to the pot.
But wouldn't we get ignored by candidates just focusing on New York City, Los
Absolutely.
Angeles, Chicago, and Dallas? They
Absolutely.
wouldn't come here. They wouldn't come to Idaho. They wouldn't come to Milwaukee. They wouldn't go to Detroit. They just
Kansas,
focus on those big.
Oklahoma. Yeah.
Well,
Sure, I mean, they would go to the big population states. I
Yeah.
mean, generally, the candidates do not go to California unless they are raising money.
Exactly.
But there's huge amounts of votes there.
Yeah. And the truth is, how many people actually go out and see a candidate anyway
That
when
was my
when they
point.
come to Ohio or they come to one of the other swing state battleground
people
states?
who already know
It's
who they're voting
television
for.
ads.
Right.
That's what everybody sees. At least if you're in a battleground state. If you're in one that's not a battleground, you don't see any ads at all because they
Right.
ignore those states.
All right. Let's get to our final topic. Right now, you can carry a hidden gun in Ohio, even in a bar or a daycare center that allows those things. But you have to have a permit. You have to take 8 hours of training. Now the state legislature is considering doing away with those requirements. No longer would you have to have a permit or training to carry a concealed gun in Ohio. You would just have to be 21 years old and law-abiding. Mike Konadakis, you support concealed carry. Don't you feel safer knowing if somebody is carrying that they're trained and permitted to carry that gun?
I personally think training's a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. But here, look, this is much ado about nothing. And for decades and decades and decades and decades in the state of Ohio, open carry has been legal. Just this week, Laura Bischoff reported on a bunch of people on the Ohio State House lawn with loaded rifles, loaded guns. As long as it's out in the open, you don't need to have a permit. You do not need to have training. You just have to be 18 for a rifle, 21 for a handgun. That's been the law of the land in Ohio forever. Okay, so if it's loaded and it's in plain sight, you don't have to have any training. So now what this legislation is saying is if you're going to hide it in your purse or you're going to hide it in your jacket, you don't have to have training either. I personally don't see anything problem with training, but there's not going to be blood in the streets. In 2004, when concealed carry passed, there was all these articles saying how many people are going to die. None of that's happened.
Well, it's not the only thing the bill says. I mean, it also says that you don't have to notify a police officer if they pull you over and tell them that you have a concealed weapon. And I kind of sympathize with police officers that you might want to know that.
I think that just like the heartbeat bill, which bans abortion at 6 weeks with no exceptions for rape or incest, this bill is just another example of how extreme the Ohio legislature is getting. If this bill passes and is signed into law, virtually everybody is able to carry a concealed weapon with no background check, with no training, and without, as you say, Ann, even an obligation to tell a police officer.
But how is that different than the open carry,
You
though?
can't buy a gun without a background check, Dale.
Yeah, of course you can. That's the issue, Mike.
That's
You've
the
got
private
gun shows,
sales.
you've got internet
That's
sales,
only.
you've got all that stuff. You can buy them anywhere. You can
That's-
buy them
yeah.
anywhere.
But the argument about open carry, you can have an open carry without the training and the permit. Why not concealed carry? Is there really a difference there?
Well, all I can say is this. At a time when mass shootings are on the rise everywhere in the world, and every place else seems to be doing something, except us, the next time an Ohio school gets shot up, or the next time a cop is murdered at a traffic stop, I hope the people who vote for this are going to spare us their crocodile tears, because unless and until they're willing to stand up to the NRA, their thoughts and prayers are just hollow words.
Laura, legislatively, what's left? Ohio's been watering down these gun restrictions.
Yeah,
If they
I
pass
would-
this, what's left?
Well, I think, I'm not certain that this is going to pass
Yeah.
before maybe Stand Your Ground would be the next
Yeah.
the next iteration of gun rights, expansion of gun rights. This whole idea of this permitless carry has been around for as long as I've been covering the State House, which is a pretty long time. Dale's right. I think that the legislature has moved further and further into a willingness to expand more and more gun rights. I think the only thing that really puts a chill on it is if there's a mass shooting again.
Yeah.
And I think that only puts a temporary chill on it.
mean,
I don't know how many mass shootings you have to have anymore. I mean, it's,
I don't
We have 300 million
I
guns
don't-
in this country. If more guns were the answer to safe, we'd be the safest country in the world by far.
All right, we'll get to our off-the-record shots. Final thoughts, predictions for the weeks ahead. Mike Laudakis.
19,000 valid signatures my group collected. We're ready to turn in. It's a citizen-led initiative against City Hall down in Columbus. Ticket tax issue will be on the ballot, and it's coming in this November.
This is to reverse the
To re-
ticket tax
yep.
on Blue Jackets tickets and arts. groups, things like
Absolutely.
that. All right. Yep.
Everyone who thought the Mueller report was going to have a major impact on the next election for president was wrong. Polls show that the Mueller report has had zero impact, hasn't moved Trump's approval numbers by one iota. For Democrats, that means they're going to have to win the old-fashioned way. They're going to have to beat Trump at the ballot box. And for Republicans, it means that at least he wasn't indicted isn't going to be a compelling campaign slogan in 2020.
Ann.
according to Geotag Twitter data, more states are rooting for Michigan State than any other team. Apparently 27 of them to be exact. And I resisted the urge to wear my hoodie, my Michigan State hoodie
Thankfully.
today. I think it would have been banned from the show, but in any event, I just think we ought to think about what bandwagon we want to jump on today,
And
right now.
proud alum of Michigan State. just
Yeah,
full
this
disclosure.
all might be moot by Sunday.
That's right.
I would say my prediction is look for more reforms in the Ohio parole system. This is going to come on the heels of Shirley Smith's criticisms that came out. We have a story coming in Sunday's paper. You can see it at DaytonDailyNews.com. And secondly, I'd like to wish Mike best of luck in the Boston Marathon upcoming.
Yeah, 8 days. Speaking of Boston, you know, a lot of states have legalized sports betting, and surprise, surprise, the projections for revenue have not quite lived up to expectations, the actual revenue. And one of the reasons for that is because they say the Patriots won the Super Bowl and covered the spread, and betting parlors lost their shirts. So you can blame the Patriots for the lack of success on sports betting. Be warned, Ohio, when you consider sports betting here. That's Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and WOSU.org. Have a good week.